Rain had fallen the night before, not enough to flood the roads, but just enough to leave a filmy sheen on the pavement, like the world had been freshly painted with a dull, greasy brush. Her car was parked at an awkward angle, one tire half off the edge of our driveway like she'd come in fast and barely hit the brakes. I noticed it when I took the trash out that morning. It was subtle, but it stayed with me. Lauren hadn't mentioned much about the accident. She said she hit a curb, scratched the passenger side. Nothing serious. She smiled when she told me, "Too quick, too easy." Her eyes didn't match her mouth. The moment passed like so many others recently. A lot of things had been passing lately. Her affection, her laughter, her presence. So when she left for work that morning in her usual rush of perfume and car keys and love you bye, I walked outside like a man sleepwalking. No grand plan, just a feeling. And when I reached for the car door handle, I didn't expect it to open so easily. The smell hit me first. Faint, but not hers. Lauren always left a trace of something soft, vanilla lotion, jasmine shampoo. This was different. A mixture of cheap cologne and something more raw. I stood there for a second, staring into the half-cleaned chaos of her driver's seat. There was mud on the floor mat, a lot of it, deep brown streaks that didn't match the dry neighborhood roads. And there was a bottle of water jammed between the seat and the console, half full, not a brand we ever bought. But it was the passenger seat that stopped me. Pushed all the way back. Footprints on the dashboard. One of them big enough that I could press my own shoe against it and still see space around the edges. I leaned in. My hands were trembling before I even realized it. There was a hoodie crumpled on the floor. Not hers. Gray. XL. Some graphic on the front I didn't recognize. I picked it up and something fell out. A receipt, curled and soft from the moisture in the fabric. Chevron. 7:42 p.m. Highway 88. 2 Gatorades. 1 protein bar. 1 pack of condoms. The kind of purchase you make when you think you're just far enough away that no one will find out. I stood there, one hand gripping that stupid hoodie, the other still holding the receipt, and something inside me snapped into stillness. Not rage. Not yet. Just a kind of awareness. Like a puzzle was finishing itself, one ugly piece at a time. Her detour, her nervous laugh, the way she didn't want me to go near the car. All of it. And now this. Then I saw it. On the window, a single smeared kiss of lipstick. Too high. Wrong angle. A stain that shouldn't be there. I didn't go back inside right away. I just stood beside the car for a long time, feeling the wind shift against my skin. There's a moment right before a storm when the world goes quiet, when everything stops breathing. That was me. That was that moment. And inside that silence, I made a decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to wait, because now I knew, and she didn't. The thing about pretending everything is normal is, you start to see just how much isn't. That evening, Lauren came home like nothing had happened. The same way she had for weeks. Kicked off her heels by the door. Hummed something tuneless. Tossed her purse on the counter and asked what I wanted for dinner like we were some damn sitcom couple and not a landmine waiting to go off. I watched her. Really watched her. She moved too fast, avoided my eyes, talked more than usual, little things, small things, frantic things. And when I said, "How's your car?" her face twitched for half a second. A tiny, involuntary stutter in her mask. She smiled. "Oh, it's fine. Just a scratch. I might get it detailed next week." I said nothing, just nodded. I had the receipt in my pocket. I could feel it there, warm from my body heat, like a trigger waiting to be pulled. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed more. That night, while she was in the shower, singing like she didn't have betrayal under her nails, I slipped her keys from her purse. I checked the car again. No new surprises. Just the same evidence now burned into memory. I took photos. Everything. The seat position. The footprints. The receipt. The hoodie. I placed it all back perfectly. Locked the car. Returned her keys. The next morning she left early. Earlier than usual. Said she had a meeting across town. That she'd probably be out late. Gave me a quick kiss that didn't land fully on my lips. I let her go. Let her lie. Then I called in sick to work. And I followed her. I don't know what I expected, really. Maybe some cliché. A cheap motel. Some parking lot behind a gym. But it wasn't that. She drove an hour out of town. No traffic. No detours. No construction. Just clean, open highway, the same road printed on that receipt. I stayed 2 cars behind the whole way. Hands cold. Eyes sharp. She pulled into a gas station. Same one from the receipt. Sat in her car for a minute. Then another car pulled up beside her, a black Jeep. I couldn't see his face, not really. Just that he was tall. White t-shirt. Sunglasses. Confident posture. Like this wasn't his first time meeting a married woman in secret. She got out and slid into the passenger seat like she belonged there. Like she belonged to him. They didn't drive far. Just down a side road out of sight from the highway. I parked on a shoulder and followed on foot, cutting across a tree line. What I saw. I won't forget it. I can't forget it. They didn't go into a house. They didn't go into a hotel. They parked. Right there. In the open. Like animals. They talked for a minute. Then she laughed. Touched his chest. Then climbed into his lap. Her skirt rode up. His hand slid down. I turned away. I didn't need more. I walked back to my car. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at my own shaking hands on the steering wheel. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. I wasn't guessing. I knew. And the worst part? It didn't feel like the beginning of something. It felt like the end. She came home late that night. Almost 10 p.m. No apology. No excuse. She walked in like she hadn't just spent half her day wrapped around another man. Tossed her bag on the floor, kicked off her shoes, and headed straight to the fridge. Anything for dinner? She asked, not even glancing at me. I looked up from the couch. Remote in one hand. Her betrayal pressing against my chest like a loaded weight. I studied her. Her hair was slightly messed up. Lipstick smudged. She tried to fix it quickly in the hallway mirror when she saw her reflection, but not before I caught the uneven lines. Her blouse was buttoned wrong, one off from the top, like she'd dressed in a hurry. Her perfume was too strong, like she was trying to cover something. And still, she acted like everything was just fine. I said nothing. I couldn't. Not yet. I watched her eat leftover pasta like she hadn't just thrown our marriage off a cliff. Every now and then she'd ask something casual about work, about a show we used to watch. But the sound of her voice made me feel like I was listening to a stranger wearing my wife's skin. I barely slept. Around 2 a.m. she reached for me in bed. Her hand brushed my arm. I froze. I didn't turn. Didn't speak. After a moment, she sighed and rolled over. I stared at the ceiling for the next 3 hours, heart drumming slow and hollow. The next day, I took off again. This time, I didn't follow her. I followed him. It wasn't hard. His Jeep had a custom license plate, stupid, flashy, something like Big Mike 88. That told me enough. Guy was arrogant. Sloppy. The type to leave his fingerprints all over someone else's life like it was a joke. I waited outside the gas station where they'd met. I had no plan. No script. Just a storm brewing in my chest, heavy and cold. At 8:17 he rolled in, same Jeep, same sunglasses, same smudge aura like he owned the morning. I pulled up beside him. Rolled down the window. Mike? He blinked, confused. Yeah? You know Lauren? He gave me a slow once-over. Who's asking? I didn't answer. The silence stretched long enough to become a threat. Finally, he squinted. Wait, you her brother or something? I laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded wrong coming out of me. No, I said. I'm her husband. That got his attention. His eyes changed. He shifted in his seat. Look, Manda. No, I cut him off. Don't bother. I just wanted to see the guy who thinks it's okay to crawl into someone else's marriage like a rat. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't look guilty. He looked inconvenienced. You know she's married, right? She said you two were basically done. I stared at him. She said that. I asked flat. He nodded. Said you weren't close. No spark. Separate rooms. No ring. I took a breath through my nose. She told you that? Yeah, man. Look, I didn't mean it. But I was already rolling up the window. I didn't want to hear anything else from his mouth. Not excuses. Not apologies. Not half-truths wrapped in someone else's perfume. I drove home in silence. Everything buzzing in my head. Her lies weren't just directed at me, they were rehearsed. Packaged. Polished. She had a whole different version of us prepared for him. A different life. A different self. The betrayal was so casual, so clean. And that's when the anger started to burn. Not a fire. Not yet. but a slow, crawling heat that started in my gut and began to rise. I still hadn't confronted her. I wanted the timing to be perfect. I wanted her to walk right into it blind. She was humming again. That same stupid hum, tuneless, airy, like a sitcom character baking cookies instead of someone slowly detonating her own marriage. I stood in the hallway listening to it float from the bathroom. The door was cracked. Steam spilled out like fog. She was in front of the mirror, wrapped in a towel, hair damp, applying mascara. Going somewhere? I asked from the hallway. She jumped. Just a little. Then covered it with a smile too wide, too polished. Didn't hear you? I've got that yoga class tonight, remember? Of course. The same class she's been going to religiously every Tuesday and Thursday, even when I pointed out that her mat hadn't moved from the closet in weeks. I nodded slowly. Right? Yoga. She tilted her head, studying me through the mirror. You okay? You look tired. I smiled. Didn't sleep much. She didn't press. She never does when she knows the truth is a room she doesn't want to open. I followed her routine like a shadow that week. Every word she spoke, every excuse she made, I cataloged them. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I let her build her world of lies higher and higher, waiting for the moment I'd pull out the foundation. Thursday evening, she left for yoga at 6:15 p.m. By 6:50, I was already on Highway 88. I didn't need to tail her. I knew where she'd be. Same Jeep. Same side road. But this time, I didn't just watch from a distance. I parked nearby. I walked right up to the edge of the trees. It felt like trespassing into some alternate version of my life, one where my wife belonged to a stranger and I was just some ghost watching it happen. She was sitting in his lap again, windows fogged, arms wrapped around his neck like she hadn't vowed herself to someone else. I turned and left. Didn't need to see more. I went straight home, no detour, no distractions. I pulled the shoebox from the closet where I'd been storing everything. Photos. Screenshots. The receipt. Hoodie. Even a printout of her text logs from the cloud backup I hacked while she slept. Every message. Every lie. I laid it all out on the dining room table like a crime scene. Then I waited. She came home at 9:42. Hair messy. Lipstick reapplied crooked. When she saw me sitting at the table, her keys froze midair. Hey, what's all this? She asked, nodding toward the papers. I didn't say a word. She walked closer, slower now. Her eyes scanned the table. The hoodie. The receipt. The photos. Her face changed. Something inside her twitched and collapsed. I don't know what this is supposed to. Don't. One word. That's all it took. She went quiet. I leaned back, arms folded, just watching her. You lied to me, I said calmly. Over and over. You told some guy I was barely your husband. That we didn't share a bed. That we were done. You gave him a version of yourself that doesn't even exist. She didn't deny it. Instead, she laughed. A cold, defensive thing. Are you serious? You went through my stuff? You stalked me. There it was. The deflection. Don't flip this, I said. This is all you. God, Chris, grow up. You've been boring for years. You think I wanted this to happen? I tried. I tried with you. But you're just empty. I stared at her. Like I'd never seen her before. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even sorry. She was angry that I found out. You tried. I repeated. You tried, so you cheated? You're acting like a victim, she snapped. But you've been checked out since last year. You don't even touch me. You sit on your damn phone. You want to talk betrayal? Start there. So that was it. Her defense wasn't that she didn't cheat. It was that I deserved it. I stood up. Slowly. I want you out by the weekend. Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't expected that. Chrissy. No. No more lies. No more gaslighting. I'm done. She didn't move. Didn't say a word. Just stood there while I walked past her, up the stairs, into the guest room. Behind me, the silence wasn't guilt. It was rage. And I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. She didn't leave. Friday came and went and her stuff was still here. Saturday too. She acted like my words hadn't meant anything, like I hadn't told her to pack her life and get out. She still made coffee in the morning. Still walked around in my old t-shirts. Still put on that fake, disarming smile like she was just waiting for me to cool off. Like this whole thing was just a speed bump we could drive over and forget. But I didn't forget. I couldn't. Not after everything I'd seen. Not after the way she laughed when I laid out the proof. Not after she called me empty while she spent her nights in someone else's arms, someone else's car, someone else's world. I gave her until Sunday. Noon. And when the clock hit 12 o'clock on the dot, I walked downstairs with 2 suitcases, hers already packed with what she hadn't bothered to move. She was on the couch, phone in hand, legs stretched out like it was just another lazy weekend. "Get up," I said. She didn't even look up. "Excuse me." I said, "Get up. Your stuff's ready." She slowly turned toward me like she couldn't believe I was serious. "Are you actually kicking me out? You're being dramatic." "No, Lauren. Dramatic was you telling a stranger I was nobody. Dramatic was you lying about yoga so you could go ride some guy in a parked car like a damn high schooler." Her face went cold. All the fake calm evaporated. "You don't get to act like some saint," she snapped. "You knew something was wrong and you did nothing. You just sat there. You didn't fight for me." "Fight?" I laughed bitterly. "You started a war I didn't even know I was in. And now you want me to act like I lost it." She stood, now full of that energy she'd been keeping locked up for this exact moment. "You're throwing away 7 years over one mistake." "One mistake." I stepped closer. "Lauren, this wasn't a slip. You didn't trip and fall into his Jeep. You planned it. You maintained it. You lied in full sentences with eye contact. You lived a double life, and the only reason you're mad is because I caught you." Her arms crossed. Her eyes sharpened. "So what now? You think you're gonna what, be alone and righteous? You think that's better than trying to fix this?" "No," I said quietly. "I think anything is better than waking up next to someone who looks me in the eye and lies without flinching." There was a long silence. Then she grabbed the suitcases and stormed toward the door. Didn't look back. Slammed it so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. The moment the sound echoed down the hallway, something inside me finally released. Like I had been holding my breath for weeks and I could finally exhale. But I didn't feel peace. Not yet. Because when betrayal wraps itself around your life, it doesn't disappear just because the person who caused it walks out the door. It lingers. In the silence. In the memories. In the space where trust used to be. I sat back down on the couch in the exact spot where she'd been scrolling just 5 minutes ago. And I realized I didn't feel free. I felt empty. But at least now the silence was honest. The first night without her was quiet in a way I didn't expect. Not peaceful. Not sad. Just hollow. There were echoes where her noise used to be, drawers she slammed, her half-laughs from another room, the sound of heels clicking down the hallway always a little too fast like she was late to something she wasn't telling me about. "Yeah?" "Nothing." I sat in the kitchen, a beer sweating in my hand, staring at my phone. No calls. No texts. No apologies. She didn't even try to reach out. That part hit harder than I wanted to admit. After all the shouting, all the exposed lies, and her storming out, not even a crumb of regret. Not even a fight to fix it. And then I realized she'd probably already moved on. She had moved on long before I ever found out. I was just the slow one catching up to a story she had already finished telling. I wasn't the husband anymore. I was the inconvenience. The cover story. The fallback plan. The next morning, her mom called. Not to ask how I was. Not to check in. No. She called to yell at me. "You threw her out," she snapped. "Chris, what is going on?" I blinked, stunned. "Did Lauren even tell you what she did?" "She told me you've been distant for months. That she felt ignored. That she made a mistake and you went insane." "Insane? That's what I was now?" "Did she also tell you about the other guy?" I asked. "About the affair? The weeks of lying? The nights she said she was at yoga while she was wrapped around some other man in his car?" There was a pause. A long, frozen silence. Then, she said it wasn't serious. I actually laughed. "Right? Not serious. Just methodical. Calculated. Repeated." Her mom's tone changed. Softer now. Still uncomfortable. I thought you two were strong. I didn't expect this from her." "Neither did I said. "But now that it's happened, I'm not pretending it didn't." She sighed, mumbled something about checking in later, and hung up. That was the moment I really grasped the full scope of it. She'd already rewritten the story. I was being turned into the villain, the bitter husband who snapped because his poor wife made a mistake. She was setting the narrative. Telling people what to think before I even had a chance to speak. And suddenly, I wasn't just mourning a marriage. I was fighting for my name. So I did something I hadn't planned. I made a post. Social media? Just one. Not detailed. Not dramatic. Just enough. "Lauren and I are separating. It's not mutual. She had an affair. I found out. It's over." No photos. No names. Just facts. And man, the silence after that? It cracked the sky. Friends messaged. Coworkers. Even her own sister reached out. People knew. People suspected. But no one wanted to say it until I did. By midnight, Lauren called. First time since she left. I didn't answer. Let it ring. If she wanted to talk, she could sit in silence for a while, like I did. Like I still was. I watched the screen go dark, then set the phone face down. I didn't need her words. What I needed now was the truth. All of it. And I was ready to burn through every lie to get there. By Monday, the mask had fully cracked. She showed up. Unannounced. No text. No warning. Just a knock on the front door, loud and impatient. Like this was still her house and she'd just forgotten her keys. I didn't open right away. I let her knock again. When I finally swung the door open, she was standing there in some faux casual outfit. Tight jeans, hair done, lips glossed up just enough to pretend like she wasn't trying. But I could see it. The panic behind the eyes. That twitch in her jaw when she realized I wasn't surprised. "Hi," she said. Like she hadn't wrecked everything and then vanished. I said nothing. She gave a little laugh. "Are you really not going to say anything?" I stepped aside and let her in. Not for her. For closure. She walked in slowly, scanning the place like it had aged without her. Like the air itself had changed. It had. She sat on the edge of the couch. Her favorite spot. Or it used to be. Now it looked like a stranger had wandered into a museum exhibit of her old life. I didn't expect you to go public," she finally said. "On Facebook." I stayed standing. "Didn't expect you to lie to everyone we know either." Her mouth twisted. It wasn't lying, it was just keeping it quiet. We could have handled it privately. I shook my head slowly. Privately? You mean like the affair? The receipts? The gas station on 88? The way you looked me in the face and said it was yoga while you were getting your workout in someone else's lap? Her head dropped. For a second, I thought I saw shame. Then she looked up and it wasn't shame. It was anger. "You're humiliating me," she hissed. "Telling people things they don't need to know. Making me look like the bad guy. You are the bad guy." She stood then. Fast. "You think this is just black and white? That I just woke up one day and decided to cheat? I was lonely, Chris. I felt ignored. You checked out first. And instead of using words, you used someone else's body." That stopped her. Just long enough for the tears to show up. The kind she weaponizes. Her eyes welled up. Her voice cracked, but not from sadness, from calculation. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't even like him that much at first. It happened. I thought you didn't care anymore. You thought I didn't care, so you cheated? Do you hear yourself?" She sat back down, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know what I want." I laughed under my breath. "Well, I do. I want a divorce." The tears stopped. Just like that. Like a faucet turned off. She stared at me. Cold. Clear. "You're really doing this," she said flatly. "You're really throwing everything away over one mistake. You didn't make a mistake, Lauren. You made a decision. And you kept making it. Over and over." She stood. Walked to the door. Hand on the knob. But before she opened it, she turned to me one last time. "You'll regret this," she said. "When the anger fades. When the silence settles in. You'll wish you had just forgiven me." I stepped closer, not angry, calm. Clear. "You're confusing forgiveness with forgetting. I might forgive one day, but I'll never forget what you did to me. And I sure as hell won't build a future with someone who treated me like a backup plan." She didn't say goodbye. She just left. And this time she didn't slam the door. She closed it. Quietly. And that was worse. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. No more forced conversations. No more fake kisses on the cheek before work. No more pretending not to see the way her phone flipped screen down every time it buzzed. I wasn't living inside a lie anymore. I was outside of it, breathing air that didn't taste like denial. I started clearing things out. Her drawer in the bathroom. Her side of the closet. It was a slow process, not because it hurt, because every item I touched was another reminder that none of it had ever meant what I thought it did. The necklace I gave her for our 3rd anniversary, stuffed in a box under her shoes. The framed picture of us in New Orleans, face down in the back of a shelf, behind an old curling iron. I donated most of her clothes, the things she left behind without asking for. I didn't burn them. I didn't throw them in the street. I just got rid of them, quietly, like shedding a second skin that never fit right. That week, she started texting. Just a trickle at first. Can we talk? Please don't do anything permanent until we've had a real conversation. You don't need to respond right now, but I still love you. Each message felt like a match trying to reignite a fire that had gone out in the rain. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say to a woman who lied to my face and then tried to rewrite the ending of our story like I wasn't standing there holding the truth. But I didn't block her. Not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted her to see, to feel the vacuum her own actions created. Every time her message sat on read, I wanted it to echo back at her like a bell in an empty church. That Friday, she crossed the line again. She came to my job. I was in the break room grabbing coffee when I turned around and there she was standing by the vending machines like she belonged there. Like this was normal. Her eyes locked onto mine the second I looked up. Chris, she said softly, like we were still married, like she still had the right to use my name that way. What are you doing here? I asked, keeping my tone flat. She stepped forward. I can't do this in texts. I need to talk to you. You lost the right to need anything from me. I made a mistake, she whispered. A stupid, horrible mistake. But it didn't mean I stopped loving you. I was just selfish. I finished for her. You were selfish. You were bored. You were careless. And now that the other guy doesn't look like a long-term option, you're back here trying to collect the version of me that trusted you. Her lip trembled. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. People were watching. I didn't care. You want me to believe this is about love? I said. You didn't even apologize until you realized the consequences were real. You weren't sorry when I found the receipt. You weren't sorry when I saw you with him. You were sorry when your story stopped working. Chris, please? We had so much. I said. We had. Until you fed it to someone else like it was spare change. She blinked. Twice. Then nodded. She looked down at the floor and for a moment I thought she might finally say something honest. Something real. Instead, she said this. You'll never find someone who knows you like I do. And I looked her dead in the eye and replied. That's exactly what I'm counting on. I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. Because for the first time in months, maybe even years, I knew exactly who I was. And it wasn't her husband. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since I told her to leave. 2 weeks of rediscovering what silence really sounded like. Not the kind of silence that hides unspoken tension or the brittle quiet before a fight, real silence. The kind that settles in your bones. The kind that makes space for clarity. I started sleeping better. Eating better. I started doing things I used to love again. Took my bike out of the garage. Got coffee with friends who used to ask where Lauren was every time we met up. Now they didn't. Now they just asked, how are you holding up? And I'd say better than I expected. Which was true. But there was one thread still hanging loose. Mike. The guy she risked everything for. I never intended to see him again. He wasn't important. He was just the outlet she used when the reality of being a wife didn't excite her anymore. But last Saturday I bumped into him. Not in some dramatic movie scene way. Not a bar fight. Not a setup. A hardware store. Of all places. I was picking up a replacement door hinge. Something minor. Something mundane. I turned the corner in aisle 7 and there he was. No sunglasses this time. No smirk. Just a guy in a flannel shirt holding a bucket of paint, looking way less tall than I remembered. We locked eyes. His shoulders tensed immediately. Chris, he said, clearing his throat. I didn't respond. I kept walking, planning to brush past him. But then he spoke again. She told me you knew everything. I stopped. She told me you saw us. I turned to him slowly. That's what you want to talk about? He glanced down at the paint, then back up. I didn't know, man. I swear. I thought you guys were done. You didn't know, I repeated. That she was married. Living with her husband. Wearing her wedding ring. Leaving her car in our driveway. Coming home to my bed. She said you weren't close. That you hadn't touched her in months. Don't, I said, sharp enough to cut. Don't recite her script to me. You were just the guy dumb enough to believe it. He looked genuinely uncomfortable now. Good. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, he said. That's the problem, I replied. You never meant anything. You were just available. She used you to escape her own emptiness. And when it blew up in her face, she crawled back to me. I stepped closer, not to threaten. Just to finish. But I'm not her safety net. And you? You're not her future. You were just a mistake she never planned to keep. He didn't say another word. Didn't have to. I walked out of that store feeling lighter than I had in months. Because I realized something. I had been trying to make sense of a story that was never mine to understand. I was just a chapter in her chaos. But I didn't have to read it anymore. I didn't have to memorize the lines. I didn't have to carry the weight of what she did or who she did it with. Let them keep their mess. I had my peace, and I wasn't giving it up again. Sunday morning came with sunlight through the windows instead of shadows in my chest. It had been a month. A full month since Lauren walked out, and more importantly, since I let her. The house no longer smelled like her perfume. The couch didn't hold the imprint of someone who lied for sport. The silence was still here, yes. But now it had changed. It wasn't hollow anymore. It was earned. I spent that morning doing something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. No stress. No checking her location. No wondering who she was texting. I drank coffee on the porch and watched the neighborhood move around me. For once, I wasn't waiting for something to fall apart. Then my phone buzzed. It was her. Again. This time it was a wall of text. Long, emotional. Full of apologies, regret, twisted versions of the truth, all dressed up to look like growth. I know I hurt you, but I've been thinking so much. About us. About how far we got before things slipped. I miss you. I miss who we were. I've started therapy. I'm not asking to come back, I'm asking to talk. To explain. To maybe see if there's anything left. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish her. Not because I didn't have anything to say. But because everything I could say, I'd already lived. I didn't need to rehash it. I didn't need another fight or a fake cry or a speech about how love is messy and forgiveness is powerful. I had forgiven her. Not for her. For me. Forgiveness isn't a welcome mat, it's a closing door. And I'd walked through it, alone, on purpose. The last thing I did that morning was take down the wedding photo in the hallway. The one with her eyes smiling into mine like she meant forever. I looked at it for a long moment before placing it in a box with the rest of that version of my life. Not out of hate. Out of truth. Some love ends quietly. Ours ended with a receipt, a lie, and a kiss smeared on a window. But what I learned, the advice I'd give to anyone out there who's feeling the pit in their stomach, the doubt creeping in, the truth they're afraid to see, is this. Don't ignore the shift. When someone stops seeing you, stops respecting you, stops choosing you, listen. Don't wait for it to become evidence in your hands. Don't give your loyalty to someone who weaponizes your trust. You deserve better. Even if it's just you on the other side of the wreckage, you're better than staying buried in a love that stopped being real. She made her choice. And I finally made mine. And this time, it was for me.